Apoorv, you're up next, pal. Tell me a bit about your experience and how it's been raising capital or getting into the rooms that you need to get into to pitch.
Yeah, as probably won't be surprising, I can't relate to what Amanda said there about some of those advances from folks. I do think that that's a more gender specific challenge. I think more so I can relate to one of the things that Phil said earlier about um, his I guess attempt or his successful attempt at becoming a director at NRC. I think being for me and I know for some of my friends that have tried to start new startups, age uh, possibly coupled with kind of being a visible minority, like but I'm not as sure about that, but I definitely know that age can be a concern, especially when you're dealing with clean tech. Most of the people working on this have multiple years of experience. They're generally kind of honed within the industry that they target, and then they leverage that experience to start something that they think will be better. When you're young and you haven't got many years behind you of having done that relevant work, you really do have to earn your stripes. I think very specifically of a presentation I had to make back 8 9 years ago, to the oil and gas industry while I was still working for Zero Core, an oilfield service company, and we were making a presentation downtown Calgary, and the entire room was full of, literally there was no minority or woman present in that. It was about 30 engineers. All of them were 40 or above. I had just turned 23 or something, and my two bosses at the time, like the guys in their 50s who ultimately became founders for Carbon Upcycling, they were both in the room with us, and we're all wearing the Zero Core tags. And it literally, I think, just made people open their mouths wide when it was me who got up and started doing the presentation. I think they were expecting Greg or Randy to go up and talk, um, and I had a couple of, you could tell by the tone of questioning and some of the critical questions around the assumptions behind what was being presented, that age was a factor there. Like they're like, how did you even come up with this? Like, how do you justify like the numbers that you put into the model? And it was pretty insightful. And I think in one sense, um, diversity and inclusion from that kind of visible standpoint, whether it be gender related or diversity, obviously that gets a lot of attention. I think for me personally, I've been quite fortunate in that I've been able to kind of live in different parts of the world, like being from India originally and having grown up in the Middle East before I moved to North America. I've seen, three very distinct cultures growing up. And so for me, I think I've really tried to be conscious, like in my position as the CEO of Carbon Upcycling, to look at intellectual diversity and give that a lot of credence. Like not just look at diversity that goes back to kind of looks and gender and things like that. And that's not to say that that's not important. I just think that sometimes within that uh, focus, you can lose the importance of how important intellectual diversity can be. And I remember this podcast, it's Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman. He interviews an entrepreneur from Venezuela, who was just getting this cryptocurrency going down there, like during the whole, I guess their currency is still very volatile, but back like about 10 years ago when it was really crazy is when he had the idea. And he was talking about how like there are many people in India that code for a living and work as software programmers. And he's like, there's actually not a lot of difference between a programmer in Chennai compared to a computer science kind of software programmer in San Francisco. It's like, yes, they look very different, they eat very different food, but in terms of how they think, their job is a lot more emblematic of how much they have in common, more so than the differences they have in how they go about things. So yeah, I'll just, I guess, finish with that and just say that one last observation that I've seen in North America is that I actually think that being a male person of color is actually easier than being even like a Caucasian woman. Like I have noticed that. I think women in general just have a tougher time than men do even if they're, ethnic or persons of color or whatnot. And I'm not sure if Amanda and Phil have any thoughts on that, but I've definitely seen that firsthand, and it's remarkable because, like, there are Canadian and American women that have lived here all their life, and they will not be given the credence that, like, I'll be given here as like an immigrant who just moved here 10 years ago, and it's pretty hard to ignore. Like, I'm not very observant in humans and like how people interact, but even for me, it's been something that I really do think happens.